The first missile warning screamed through the cockpit at 30,000 feet, and every passenger on the chartered transport jet felt it as a sudden drop in their stomachs, even before the alarms began to wail. Oxygen masks fell like white ghosts from the ceiling. Someone screamed. Someone prayed. And in seat 17A, a quiet woman with tired eyes closed her book, unbuckled her seatbelt, and whispered a single word under her breath, finally. Her name on the manifest was Lena Carter. Civilian. Passenger. No rank, no title, no reason for anyone to look at her twice. She wore plain clothes, carried a battered backpack, and had boarded the aircraft with the polite invisibility of someone who had learned long ago how to disappear in plain sight. The flight attendants remembered her only because she'd smiled and said thank you. The soldiers on board assumed she was a contractor's assistant or someone's spouse. No one knew that she had spent most of her adult life listening to alarms far worse than this, or that her hands already knew what to do before her mind finished processing the danger. The transport jet shuddered violently as the pilot banked hard. The intercom crackled with strained professionalism. Brace, brace, brace. We are under possible hostile lock. Repeat, possible hostile. The message cut out in a burst of static. Lena stood. Ma'am, sit down. A flight attendant shouted, fear sharp in her voice. Lena didn't argue. She didn't explain. She simply reached the cockpit door as the aircraft lurched again, and she caught herself on the frame with reflexes that did not belong to an ordinary passenger. She knocked once, hard, then keyed the emergency override panel with muscle memory she hadn't used in years. Inside the cockpit, the pilot and co-pilot were fighting a losing battle. Their radar showed fast-moving contacts closing in. The transport was slow, heavy, defenseless. A voice crackled through their headsets. F-16 scrambled from a nearby base, still minutes away. Minutes they didn't have. The door opened, and the pilot turned, ready to yell, then froze. Lena met his eyes, calm cutting through chaos. You're bleeding time, she said evenly. You need to dump altitude and kill your electronic noise. Let me talk. Who the hell are you? The co-pilot demanded. Someone who doesn't want to die today, she replied. She slid into the jump seat as if it had always been hers. Her eyes scanned the instruments, fingers hovering just short of touching anything. Permission to advise. There was another violent jolt. The missile warning screamed again. Permission granted, the pilot snapped. Lena leaned forward and keyed the radio frequency the way a pianist finds a familiar key. Falcon Flight, this is Eagle 1 requesting immediate contact. There was a pause, then disbelief. Say again, Eagle 1. Identify. Lena didn't flinch. You know who I am. You trained on my tapes. Now you need to vector left, Angels 25, and drag that threat away from this transport. Silence. Then a different voice, sharper, urgent. Control, who is Eagle 1? The answer came from an older controller, his voice suddenly tight. Stand by. On the ground, in a hardened operations center, a gray-haired officer stared at the screen, his breath catching. That call sign hadn't been used in years. Not since the crash, not since the woman who had rewritten half their combat doctrine disappeared into a civilian world she'd never quite fit. Eagle 1 is active, he said slowly. All units, follow her instructions. Back in the sky, the F-16 pilots didn't question it. They trusted the voice. There was something in it, authority forged in fire, clarity born of survival. They broke formation, engines roaring, pulling hostile radar away from the lumbering transport just as a missile streaked harmlessly past, chasing the wrong target. Inside the cabin, passengers were crying, clinging to each other, unaware that the thin line between life and death was now a woman they'd walked past in the aisle minutes earlier. Lena stayed focused, guiding the pilots, translating chaos into clean, decisive action. Her voice never wavered, even as memories tried to claw their way back. Another sky, another warning, another day she hadn't been fast enough. The threat was neutralized in a blinding flash miles away. When it was over, when the alarms fell silent and the transport leveled out, the cockpit was quiet except for the hum of engines and the sound of breathing, shaky, human, alive. The pilot turned to her slowly. They called you Eagle 1, he said. That's not just a call sign. Lena looked out the windshield at the endless blue. It used to be, she said. I retired it. A voice crackled through the radio again, lighter now, awed. Eagle 1, ma'am, we owe you our lives. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, there was something wet there, something she refused to let fall. Just doing my job, she replied softly. All of you did. When the transport landed, the passengers erupted into applause they didn't fully understand. Some cried harder. Some laughed. Soldiers clasped each other's shoulders. And Lena slipped back into her seat, buckled herself in, and waited. They found her anyway. On the tarmac, under a blazing sun, a young F-16 pilot stood at attention as she approached, helmet tucked under his arm. "Ma'am," he said, voice thick with emotion, "they told us about you in training. About how you saved a squadron by breaking every rule that mattered." Lena smiled, small and tired. "Rules are tools," she said. "Lives are the mission. What do we call you now?" he asked. Passenger doesn't seem right. She considered the question, then shook her head gently. "You can call me whatever helps you remember this," she said. "That heroes don't always wear the uniform anymore. Sometimes they're just on board." As she walked away, the pilots watched her go, a quiet reverence settling over them. They would tell the story for years, about the day a no-name passenger stood up in a moment of terror and became something more. About the voice that cut through fear and led them home. And somewhere between the sky and the ground, between who she had been and who she was now, Lena Carter finally allowed herself to believe that even after everything lost, she could still make a difference. Because courage doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it just stands up when the alarms go off.